Automotive industry leaders are hoping to see exemptions for vehicles compliant with the current trade deal as Canada and the U.S. continue discussions ahead of tomorrow's tariff deadline. With me now is Flavio Volpe, the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. He's also a member of the Prime Minister's Council. Flavio, always appreciate your time. How hopeful are you that a deal can be reached in the waning hours of this deadline, which kicks in at midnight tonight?
Well, I think the right people are at the table talking to each other. So it won't be for lack of engagement. I could probably flip a coin on whether we have a deal or not here. You know, as best as we understand it here, we're still some ways apart. There are constructive conversations, but the deals that the president has been announcing for the last few days, at least into last week, with the Japan deal, those terms don't necessarily work for Canada. We have a different industrial relationship with the U.S. We're so integrated that you know, if they're pushing to mirror those, you know, we're more likely not to have a deal today.
And you mentioned in terms of being ways apart here, now that we're hours from the deadline, what specifically might that mean for the auto industry?
Look, in automotive here, we have a tariff on parts that has an exemption if they're USMCA compliant parts. It's helped to keep the industry moving on both sides of the border. On vehicles, we're stuck with a tariff that is affecting Canadian vehicle production by about 25 to 30%, depending on the automaker. And so, you know, if they extended the same principle in whatever deal that we make here for exemption if they're USMCA compliant, that would be great. If they don't, we're going to continue to watch this slow bleed. Ironically, the bleed is for American companies. You know, American companies making cars in Canada, their volumes are down. But American parts suppliers in Michigan and Ohio and Indiana, who send 50% of the parts that go in those cars up this way, their volumes are down. And, you know, and for all his effort to do something for the U.S. steel industry, you know, steel and aluminum and other raw materials, all of those volumes are down for the 55% of the raw materials that automakers in Canada source from the U.S. So it isn't that they're not hurting. You know, the Americans are hurting with this action too. You know, that it's hard to. Before this, none of us would have thought that the biggest deterrent to profitability for Detroit would be Washington. And so we're in this weird world.
And with so much integration, as we talked about for many months now, between the Canada and the U.S. automotive industries, ultimately, what would be an ideal solution that would benefit both sides? Is it to go back to what was agreed to under the CUSMA agreement?
Yeah, look, but we also need to be realistic. You know, the president is acting like he's running a protection racket and he's expecting some payment. So how do you do that? How do you create the conditions where we have tariff-free automotive sale from Canada into the U.S.? Well, we've got to work together to squeeze out China. What we did when we went from NAFTA to USMCA, so we said a car, if you wanted to sell a car tariff-free, it had to go from 62.5% local content to any one of the three countries to 75. Well, is there another number that we can go to that squeezes out China? Is there another number that we can go to on the percentage? Right now, 70% of the steel and aluminum that are in these vehicles should come from the region. Are there other things that materials we can put in there or raise that floor? And then also, you know, the USMCA has really worked for American parts suppliers. About 10% more of every vehicle made in Canada is American today compared to 2019. So there are things that we could do that could be real wins for the Americans while restoring that access for us, but they have to be willing to listen and treat us differently. And up to now, they haven't.
Flavio Volpe is the president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, also a member of the Prime Minister's Council. Flavio, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.